Welcome to our webinar on regenerative medicine. I am your host, Dr. Dan Fink. My guest today is Dr. Jason Minsky. Dr. Minsky, welcome to our webinar.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to be here. Grateful for this opportunity.
Well, I'm glad you can make some time. What I'd like to do before we jump into the products and things, I'd like to ask you to share a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in regenerative medicine and what inspired you to do it.
Sure. So for the last 7 years or so, I've been in regenerative medicine, working with clinics locally and across the country. Prior to that, I was in the franchise world. So a healthcare franchise that I worked with for about 10 years. I had a regional developer role where I would work with a lot of the clinics and work on the systems and marketing and implementation of those systems and marketing. Sometimes called in to help with the teams and training and things like that. But yeah, so franchising, and then I shifted into medical where, like I said, I got into regenerative medicine. I've been fortunate because I've been able to work with not only the homologous products, but we started in the autologous world, working with bone marrow and adipose. So it's been a journey, and I've learned a lot and seen a lot, and I'm really grateful for that journey.
Outstanding. Thank you. So can you tell us about some of those key products and that you do use and why are they so effective?
Yeah. So like I said, about 7 years ago, getting into the space, our clinics were mainly autologous. We were working with bone marrow and adipose. Only a short time went by. Then we started exclusively working with bone marrow. But what we found was there was a lot of good products coming out, Wharton's jelly products. So we looked into that, researched everything, even went through a period of testing, if you will. And so after we got comfortable with a lab that we wanted to work with, from there, we started doing most of our procedures with the homologous products that were available.
Wonderful. Any success stories that you can think of right off the bat?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. When I started into the regenerative medicine space, I did it because it was a good opportunity, to be honest. I thought it was something that I could help, given my background in franchising, I could help systematize. I was working with a large clinic, and I could help systematize that, implement some new marketing strategies, things like that. So I saw it as a good opportunity career-wise. And when we got in the space, we did grow. And I guess we can get into that in a little bit. But, 6 weeks in or so almost immediately, we had one case where the lady was basically rolled in on a wheelchair and both knees were gone. It was somewhat emotional from the respect that, she had moved from New York. She was looking to enjoy her retirement. She had a very successful career. And shortly before her retirement, her knees basically gave out. And so when she came into our clinic, she had been to quite a few consultations, and they told her that there's really not much that they could do short of, bilateral replacements. So to make that story shorter, we ended up treating her, and it was the homologous products that we had started using, and she was rolled into the clinic, and 6 weeks later she was in the clinic dancing around. Yeah, it was incredible. It was a great story, but for me it was the best thing to witness, because like I said, it was a good opportunity for me to get in the space, but to actually see how regenerative medicine could transform somebody's life. Now she's able to enjoy her retirement that she deserves. And yeah, that was incredible. From there, I love the space. I love the opportunity, but from there, it really, landed in my heart where I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I want to help as many people with these products as I can.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure she's pretty happy.
Yeah, she's been doing well.
As we move forward through the webinar, I want to ask, Before investing in advertisement, what steps do you take to ensure the team is prepared, the patient's conversion processes are in effect? How do you help?
Yeah, so I guess you asked me to do this webinar on clinic growth, basically, and which I appreciate. And we talk to physicians all over the country every day about this exact topic. And one of the things that I try to reiterate as much as possible, and just drawing from that experience, the very first thing that we did in the large clinic that we grew that we're talking about, we took a look at what the team was doing and what the operations were, what the process was, what the patient experience was. So really spent a good, bit of time analyzing where we currently were. Once we had a good sense of that, we, interviewed team members. We made sure that their headspace was in the right place. All the things that you want to do, make sure the team is prepared and ready to go before we implement a new plan. And then that's the next thing, is that you lay down a good plan and look at, the plan should start with the operations in the clinic. So patient experience wise, make sure that, or at least what we did was we made sure that when the patient walked in the door, from the time they left, their entire experience was amazing, and that they felt wanted and that they felt cared for. And we broke down each piece of it in the clinic of that process to ensure that. That was the first thing. And then the second thing is we looked at each piece of the process again and said, okay, how do we build in, we know we're giving great care, we know we're giving a great experience. How do we build in referral mechanisms into those pieces? So for example, one thing that we did, it was a large space that we were operating out of, and we wanted the patients to feel comfortable in that space. So one of the first things we did is implemented a tour of the space. Now, I work with doctors that have smaller spaces, and I still tell them, tour them around, let them know, simple things like where the bathroom is, but also too, what you do in that space, what kind of equipment you use, show them the equipment. And then also communicate, like a lot of patients love that piece of equipment and they've actually referred their friends and family because of it. Mentioning the word referral and, introducing and letting them know that it's a culture of referral. I think those are the biggest things, is develop the plan, make sure that the patient experience, around the patient experience, and then, build in your referral mechanisms, because if your patient experience is great, they should be referring their friends and family. And that just gives you the opportunity to help more people.
That's outstanding. And I can see you're living what it is you're teaching. So outstanding. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
We discussed marketing strategies, and that's got to be key to the success here as well. It plays such a crucial role in any business, but what strategies have you found most effective in growing the practice?
Yeah, great question. Big question. And again, we talk to a lot of clinics every day about this topic as well. One of the things along the way in the last 7 years, since we developed kind of our own provider advocate agency, where we help clinics all over the place, operations, marketing, with all aspects of practice. I try to say to the providers, divide your marketing strategies into two pieces. One is going to be internal, one's going to be external. Because there's just as much opportunity in one as there is in the other. And so internally, what we were talking about before, the referral mechanisms, that's a big piece of it. But also utilizing your team and making sure, whether you have one team member or 10 team members or 20 team members, make sure each team member, first, that their strengths, but then play to their strengths. Develop triggers in the clinic, whether it be posters, handouts, anything like that. Give your team tools to produce referrals, and they'll do it, And then the other thing is training. Make sure that every week you go over those processes and those triggers and those mechanisms So they understand that, you know, a focus is, the first focus is patient care. Nothing will get you more referrals than that. But the second focus is asking for the referrals. You know, everybody says that what's the number one reason you don't get referrals is because you don't ask for them. So of course you train on it, asking for referrals, but then pay attention to how they're asking for referrals. Really drill down on that, deep train on that, and give them the tools to do it. That's almost just as important. You know, a team member, we've had some great team members. They can't remember everything and can't do everything. But so if you give them as much help as you can, they'll show up for you. Good people will definitely show up. And I've been fortunate to work with some really, really great teams over the years.
Outstanding. So again, you're emphasizing the training, ongoing training and support, but externally, what do you do?
Yeah, so in my mind, once I have that all set up, as far as good operations, good processes, good referral mechanisms, all the things that, you know, sort of, I've heard along the way, holes in the bucket, fill the holes in the bucket, right? And that makes a lot of sense, because when you start doing external marketing, you're spending money. And you don't want to spend money and then have, you know, patients come in, not have a great experience, not take advantage of referral opportunities, things like that. So first, you get the internal squared away. If you do it diligently, you can do it pretty quickly. And then when you decide to do external marketing, again, lay in the plan and look at the strengths of your clinic first. You know, that's what we did. We grew because we looked at, was the number one, we analyzed the procedures we've done to that point in the patient demographic, and said, what's the number one procedure people come in here for? At that time it was knees, right? So we decided to focus our marketing on that one campaign, which I think is a good thing to do. I'm not saying you can't do 10 campaigns at a time, but what you should do is go one by one. I see clinics all the time that try to do everything or market everything out. And, you know, sometimes it's a waste of money. And then other times, even when the marketing does work, the team isn't prepared for the influx of patients in every aspect, or for every treatment. So focus on one at a time, get that down, and then move to the next. When you talk about, you know, what we did as far as marketing specifically, a lot of it was paid social. Over half of our marketing was based on Meta. And you know, we got to the point where we're pouring money into that every month, but we had all the mechanisms in place internally to take advantage of that. The other point I want to make is we actually had systems for lead generation. In other words, when the leads would contact us, we had a firm system of follow-up. Most of, I don't know, it doesn't matter what kind of lead, but when it's external, this is the public you're marketing to. They don't have the amount of education, say, that a patient who refers somebody to the clinic has. So a key point is pre-education, meaning I love when our team would get people on the phone so that they could communicate some key points of, you know, whatever procedure or whatever campaign they were doing, give them the information so they know, so the patient knows before they come in, so they're educated. That's a huge deal. But we had a system with the phones. So meaning, you know, we always had a team member on the phones, or multiple team members on the phones, either receiving calls or making outgoing calls. That's a huge driver when it comes to marketing. The phones are the catalyst. So no matter what marketing you do externally, that's going to be a key part to it. So make sure you have good people with good phone skills, and make sure people are on the phones and constantly outgoing calls. So paid social was huge. That area, you know, you're going to get a lot of leads typically. Those are people that are scrolling through their phone. So it's, you know, they look at it, they see it. Yeah, maybe it's something I'm interested in. So they click on it and they put their lead in. They're not as high value as say like Google. Google's more specific because people are going to the computer to find you or a solution for their problem. And so when your ad is in front of them, they were looking for you. So they're a higher value lead. The issue with that type of, you know, an apples to oranges comparison, paid social is great because it's less expensive. The lead cost is less expensive. So if you have a good follow-up system, you can really take advantage of that. On the other side, Google's great because those people are looking for you, but you're going to pay a lot for it. So it's a give and take. I try to, these days we try to do a very balanced approach. So we're doing both. I think it's good to be in both places. Number one, sort of a branding concept, but then two, it's great it's great to have budget for Google and know that those are high value patients. It's great to have paid social budget and know they're a little bit lower value leads, but if you work it right, your numbers can be just as good or even better than Google in the end, depending on what campaigns you're doing.
Okay, so how do you rate then the success of the ROI? I mean, is there a system you go by?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, whenever we set out to do an external campaign, and we handle a lot of them these days, our marketing team for clinics all over the country, there's a couple of things. One is you want to make sure your case value for what you're marketing out there is sufficient. Because if you're marketing something that doesn't have a good case value or a good net value, no matter how good the marketing is, the campaign can end up being a loser. So you want to make sure your case value, and that's why biologics are great because they typically have a higher case value. So you want to find those campaigns that have the high case value or sufficient. I would say minimum 1,500 per transaction is the minimum. And then, to judge the campaign on performance, we look at satisfactory or just getting by as a 3-to-1 ROI. A good ROI is going to be like a 5-to-1. A great ROI is going to be a 7-to-1. And, hitting it out of the park is going to be 9-to-1 or greater. And we've actually been fortunate enough to have some campaigns that did, close to 20-to-1. So, but yeah, that's how we rank them, and anything that dips below that 5-to-1 kind of goes in that caution category, and that happens with campaigns over time because of market saturation or just anything. I mean, there are different factors, but yeah. So we try to run in that 5 to 9-to-1 of ad spend ROI.
Makes complete sense. I appreciate that. At the end of this webinar, so as we bring it to a close and we start to wrap up.
Before we do that, sorry, I just
please.
make sure sorry, make sure that we get the points in for whoever you or whoever we share this with. But I think it's important to look at that clinic and break down the numbers a little bit, because there's a lot of work that goes into this, and I think that's important to understand. In other words, let's just work forward for a second. So, when we got up to about 500,000 a month, we were converting about 125 cases a month at around $4,000, right? So that's what obviously will get you to $500,000. But the work that goes into it, if you take the numbers and say, okay, what's my conversion percentage? So let's say it's 70%. That means that month, I'm not doing the strict math here, but let's call it 180 consultations that we did. That means, 180 people showed up to the clinic that were interested in something that we might be able to help them with. Then, taking that number, 180, call it 200 for a second, that's, you got to double that and say 400 people that month booked an appointment. So 200 showed up. And then taking that number and saying, traditionally about 50% of the leads that you'll get will actually book an appointment. That was about 800 leads a month. So when you think about that, and you really got to have systems in place, but if you grow up to that level, you have to have a team in place to manage that lead generation. There's a way to do it, but it's, being strategic about it is obviously advantageous, but what I'm trying to point out is it usually doesn't happen overnight. And systems are a key part of that. Having people on the phones calling the 800 leads to try to get them to book an appointment. So yeah, I just wanted to break that down. One other point on the patient conversion side of things that I think is important to note is when you're looking at presenting a case or options to a patient, obviously, from what I said, have multiple options for the patient, right? So even back when we were still doing PRP, we did PRP, we had that option, we had homologous option, and then we had a lot of times an autologous still option. About 90% of the patients typically chose that homologous option. But my point is, we had those options mainly because, for what the patient was comfortable with, let them make the decision. And then also from an affordability standpoint. So I think that's a key part of this is, not really selling the patient, but creating the opportunity for the patient to buy.
Makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you
Sure.
for going in a little bit deeper with that for us. Um, so as we summarize here, any final advice that you can share with our audience through this process?
Um,
Some-
yeah, so looking at what we've just talked about and what I tried to break down for everybody.
Mhm.
I think, the key points are start internal, fill the holes in the bucket, make sure you have a system and a plan, make sure you dedicate time each week to training, make sure your team members are prepared. And that goes with giving them all the tools that they need. One, to treat the patient and give great care to the patient, then two, to produce referrals when they do give great care. I think that's extremely important. When you feel comfortable with what your internal processes are, and there's a lot of great clinics we talk to and work with that have excellent internal processes. So when you're at that point, you're comfortable. If you're trying to grow and you want to spend money on growth, look at what's available. I think when you look externally, digitally is obviously a powerhouse. Paid social has its pros and cons. Google has its pros and cons. And then even, from aspects of like online presentation, really dive into that. What does your Google page look like? Does it have all the information you want on there? What does your website look like? I've seen a lot of bad websites out there that are basically just brochures and they're not, lead gathering sites. So look at your online presence, look at Google yourself, find your clinic, look at your business's presence online and judge it, be objective about it, bring your team members in, ask them what they think what you can do better, as far as having an online presence. So those things are extremely important when you're external marketing. Make sure your social media pages edify everything you're putting out there that you're spending money on to advertise. So most intelligent patients will look you up, and you want to make sure that the online presence is firm. That's a lot of what we do. A lot of that. We look at our clients' online presence, make sure it's shored up, and if it's not, we figure out how to do that for them. So that I think that's important. And then budget wise, like I said, the 5 to 9 ROI. 5 to 1 to 9 to 1, keep that in mind. Don't just keep on doing the campaign because you're used to it or you're comfortable with it. Sometimes you got to shift. So if it drops below that 5 to 1, put it in the caution category. And usually I would say when a campaign goes in the caution category, it's max, it's got 60 days left. So you've got to shift, and you've got to do other things. So constantly, at least annually, but if not quarterly, go back, look at everything, make sure, the messaging that you're putting out there, everything's correct. Really drill down on it. It's worth it to do. So I guess my point there is obviously you want to have a system in place, make it monetarily beneficial to do, that external marketing. But even the things that you don't spend money on but are out there, take a look at those and make sure they're quality too.
Great advice. So many people want to jump right in, but they haven't, yeah, as you say, fixed the holes in the bucket. And so out goes the money as soon as the patients come in. Um, Lastly, next steps. Next steps for those that are want to implement these strategies for their own practices.
Yeah, so like I said, we help a lot of clinics around the country. We work with them on products. We're a distributor for homologous products. We utilize in that space, we utilize mainly Platinum Biologics because it's great. They have a great selection of products. It's very physician centric. So anybody that's looking to use, whether it be musculoskeletal or aesthetic, whatever the practice is, it's a med spa, it's orthopedic, whatever that practice is, that's who we work with. So we're well prepared there, and we can guide you through product selection. So we're happy to help with that, and also marketing operations, anything in that realm. But I'll say this too: it's not, I do this all day, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk to so many great, awesome, and intelligent physicians around the country. And I'm always happy to have that conversation. So even if somebody's not a client or doesn't buy stuff from us, that's fine. They can call me, we can talk. If I have some experiential advice for them, great. I'll tell you the other reason is because I always learn something when I talk to people. So I love that aspect of it too. So they can, I'm sure we're gonna have a link or something or share it where they can, schedule a call if they'd like. But however we can help, our team is ready to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. This has been very informative, but yet you did a great job communicating the value of what you do and the reasons why you do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate you.
Take
All
care.
right. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.